I'm going to give us a bit more sort of context to where we are, a bit more of a sort of intro into AI and how it works, a bit more about current best practice, some focus on AI and what it means for consumer behavior, and then AI and what it means for business. My role, very quickly, is just understanding how technology is changing business. How does it change the way that we live our lives? And therefore, how is it changing marketing? It's basically because we've made the job possible to be done by a robot. We've made ourselves more equivalent. So that's the kind of context in which we're doing our job, where slowly but surely we're expecting things to be immediate. We're expecting things to be defendable. We're expecting things to be attributable. We're expecting to close the loop. And there is this really weird dynamic, I think, in the industry where a lot of people feel like they're behind and a lot of people feel like they don't even know what questions to ask. A lot of things that we used to call AI are actually not AI. Like a lot of things that are sort of celebrated as AI are actually much more basic. A lot of the things that we now call AI are things that we used to call something else. AI has become a very helpful way to get funding, a very helpful way to justify job losses, a very helpful kind of strategic lever to pull in the boardroom. But it's creating an awful lot of complexity and confusion and chaos out there. Generative AI is a fairly narrow subset of AI that focuses on creation from patterns. If I had to simplify most readily what generative AI and what large language models are all about, it's all about patterns in data. It's all about being able to predict what should follow in a sequence based on relationships found in a giant corpus of data. There's now a sort of movement, I'll talk about this in a bit, towards agents. The idea of an agent is you're not just getting it to do one thing. You're not just getting it to write an email, you're basically giving it a task to do. So what you're asking it to do is to sort of hack into your browser, and a little bit like an automatic button pusher, you're asking it to sort of take over your screen, read things, understand things, click on things, make decisions. And what we're really getting is something that can start to do elements of people's jobs. And that's where it gets quite interesting. It can obviously also make text, so you can write a poem about speaking at a conference in Sydney. And then you start to realize that actually kind of a lot of what we do is text, really. So then you get to this sort of fascinating point where if you take a step back, something which is as specific as generative AI actually means a lot of different things for us. So sometimes it's doing the work for us. Sometimes it's advising us and helping us humans lead the process. And increasingly, people are using it to explore. So people are using it to help them be more creative and to challenge themselves to be better. The only way we know how to apply it is to sort of fit into the existing system. This is quite a profound point, actually. I could write a book on this. And the only way it really gets put in place is if it's faster or cheaper, because that's how businesses work. At this point, I decided to channel what I thought Paul Frampton might be saying to me. Just tell us what people have been doing and what to learn from. So I thought I'd give you some AI best practice. I have spent the last 18 months trying to answer this question, which is let's get the really, really sexy consultancies. Let's get the really sexy tech companies and let's keep on reading their press releases. Let's go on their website. Let's meet up with people and have coffees and say it's off the record. And when I look at what people are talking about, it's still not that exciting. OpenAI's website, you can go to stories, people doing stuff with conversational AI, people using AI to automate some parts of sending invoices, but it's not really kind of setting my imagination on fire, really. And I think this is my way of getting out of Paul's question, by the way. I think, in all honesty, the very best work in AI is not yet in the public domain, because if you've got like an unbelievable competitive advantage, you don't talk about it. I do think a lot of the best AI work has not come to fruition yet, or at least is not ready to be presented. And I do think smaller companies are leading the way because it's a hell of a lot easier to employ AI in a tiny company that is agile. So the work that I find a little bit more exciting is ads that are made properly with AI. Synthetic data testing. I don't know whether to believe this or not. I have quite lively conversations with Mark Ritson about this. There is a theory that you can basically use synthetic audiences to test anything. So you can do focus groups with not real people. You can even do market sizing with not real people. AI knowledge management, I think, is amazing. So the ability of AI to do boring stuff, which actually makes a really big difference, is amazing. I'm not being sort of cynical, is that you're not late. You're not the people that are left behind. There's not this sort of underground meeting group of people that are smug about everything they've accomplished with this. This is a very good time to be experimenting with this stuff. There's nothing to be fearful of, but I would sort of ask people to not do the brief, which is, do an AI thing. AI should be part of the toolkit that we have, which allows us to do amazing things. But the brief should always be, how can we work better? Or how can we incentivize people more accurately? Or how can we improve our company culture? Or how can we bring new people into the brand? And there's two more things to kind of tease you with. There are basically two different aspects to AI, which I think we should focus on. One, which is, how is AI changing consumer behavior? And the other is sort of going back to operations a bit more. Our job is to connect with people, and therefore we need to know where people are spending their time. There is an argument that suggests that a big media channel in the future will be people spending time with AI characters. I don't think this is necessarily going to happen for the target audiences that we tend to care about, because we tended to not care about gamers because it wasn't sort of, how we saw our audience. So I'm not convinced that this will be a big thing, but it might be. People have made graphs where the numbers get big quickly, but it's basically guesswork. I think AI discovery and recommendation has the potential to be absolutely vast. It's always hard when you do what we do to know how weird we are. And everyone that's a bit like me is doing stuff like this all day long. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's mainstream. But especially when it comes to decisions which are quite rational and boring, increasingly AI discovery and recommendation is kind of a bit like SEO anyway. Like the tactics that people use, because I do believe that companies should be investing in this, are actually quite like the tactics they would use for SEO. I could talk about this for a really long time, but we don't have time now. But there's a lot of sort of snake oil being sold in this space, because actually it's very difficult to know how your brand appears on, it's called GEO, generative engine optimization. There's obviously going to be a huge thing with kind of AI ads, which is when you're in an LLM like ChatGPT, people will increasingly be placing ads. This is sort of hot off the press. This is what ads in ChatGPT are going to look like. They're going to be very expensive, and by the looks of things, they're not particularly good. There's also conversational shopping, this idea that a kind of bots-like experience will help you buy things. I tend to think these are quite niche, because I don't think real people really behave like this. I think people quite like shopping. So I tend to think that agentic shopping is a bit of a waste of time. It's about as big as voice shopping, which made sense to technology people, but didn't make sense to real people. Whereas I think that agentic discovery, GEO, will be very, very big, but a lot of that is really sort of SEO. Basically, every part of what we do, and you can go through it piece by piece, can be enhanced by AI. There's a lot of strength of AI as a sort of general admin enabler. There was a really good piece that came out in Harvard Business Review overnight, which was basically saying companies are now full of the same number of people being more productive, getting more stuff done, but what they're doing is less helpful and more chaotic, and therefore it's kind of not really working out for many places. I think AI is amazing as a creative partner. I think there is really interesting potential in AI and personalization for the right types of category and what is genuinely helpful. I think it's fascinating to think of what can be semi-automated because it doesn't matter that much. I do think it sort of democratizes creativity. It doesn't really mean a lot to the best brands on the world, but it means an awful lot to companies that were not able to accomplish that much. I think it gets really exciting when we take a bit of a step back, and we start to sort of restructure how we work. Because we've always, and rightfully so, we've had this process where we have the people, and then we figure out the best structure, and then we figure out the best process, and then we figure out the best tools to support them. And I'm a very sort of human first person, but I still think that AI may be profound enough that actually we can start to go the other way a little bit and think about what tools should we use, and then what's the best kind of process to operate with those tools, and then where do people need to be, and what do we need humans in the loop for, and what can be totally automated, and what do we not need to do anymore. And then around that structure, we then sort of put the very, very best people.